Mr. Thomas.
I'm Brian Thomas. I'm on the Outreach Committee.
And Mr. Caruso.
Joe Caruso, Policy Committee.
Ms. Barsness.
Hi, Kari Barsness. I serve on the Policy Committee.
And Ms. Woodall.
Kelly Woodall, I serve the Outreach Committee.
Yeah, Mr. Neptune.
Nick Neptune, Outreach and Engagement.
And Ms. Gellenbeck, your icon switched around on me, but I caught it, so you still have to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Mary Jo Gellenbeck, Planning Committee.
And Mr. Black.
Paul Black. I am the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Manager for the city.
Ms. Hester.
I'm Liz Hester. I'm on the Bicycling Committee. I never get that.
It's okay. And Mr. Tong.
Kier Tong, Planning Committee.
And I think we had a couple people show up during introduction, so I think we're closer to having a full set. So we'll keep moving if you don't mind. And the first thing up on the next thing up on the agenda will be the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. So if everybody has had a chance to review the minutes, I will ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Kelly Woodall.
We have a motion and a second. And all in favor, please raise your hand. And And I don't think that there's anybody left to vote opposed, so that looks unanimous. We approve the minutes from our last meeting. Thank you very much. And at this point, we will check to see if we have any members of the public that have signed in and wish to speak before the commission. Mr. Lamb, do we have anybody waiting?
I just placed a solicitation in the chat, and I will let you know if anyone says they would like to speak.
Excellent. And we're usually pretty flexible if they figure out how to hit the button later. And that's moving right along. We're going to jump right into presentations. And today we have a review of the 65% design of the New Bern BRT design project. We've had some discussion over the past couple of weeks about trying to keep these meetings within limits. So I'm going to ask that we keep our discussion high level, and if we need to get too far into the details, we'll either need to consider sending this into a committee or corresponding individually with staff members to get specific questions answered. But it's the only thing on the list for today, so we should have time for a robust discussion. Ms. Hatchell.
I would need someone to recuse me from the meeting, please, from this part of the meeting.
I will go ahead and make that motion. Do we have a second? I see a second from Vice Chair Alley. So all in favor, please raise your hand. And I believe that is unanimous. Ms. Hatchell, you're recused. We look forward to having you back at the end of the discussion. And I believe that Mr. Driscoll will be given the presentation this evening, so I will turn it over to Mr. Lamb and Mr. Driscoll.
And Sean, I have the presentation that Megan sent last week. Is that the most current version?
It is not. I have the most current one. If I could share my screen.
Oh, well, all righty. Hold on one second. I think we can do that.
Thanks.
All right, you got it.
All right. Cool. Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Sean Driscoll. I'm an engineer with the City of Raleigh and Engineering Services, Roadway Design and Construction. I'm going to give you the advanced design presentation for the Wake BRT New Bern Avenue project. I got a few slides here, so I'm going to run through it relatively fast so you guys have ample room for questions. So this is the agenda. I'll do the presentation. Just a reminder of our public engagement and virtual open house website that we have. Everything listed there is its own narrated video. We'll talk about station design, branding, and then I have some specific slides for BPAC. This is an overview of all the corridors and the current schedule. So you can see for New Bern, we're at advanced design, proposing to start construction spring/summer next year, and then it's a 2-year construction project that will go through 2024, and that's when ridership will start. This is just a more advanced schedule. Some of the activities that we'll be working on when construction begins. And as I just mentioned, service will start in 2024. So right now, past the advanced design, we'll move into the real estate acquisition phase. So we're going to go to council on June 15th to present the design, get approval to move forward, and then move forward with finalizing our PUE, temporary construction easements. And then once those are finalized, we'll work with City of Raleigh real estate to assist engineering services in acquiring those easements for us for the construction project. Just a reminder, this is as our part of our public engagement. We have a virtual open house. So all those presentations that I listed in one of the first slides is on there, as well as a number of surveys in which we're soliciting feedback for all corridors. And that includes, it's more just a corridors, it's art and branding as well. So the New Bern Avenue project's about 5 miles long. There's 19 platforms. This is 5 miles. There's 3 miles of dedicated transit lanes. That's because we're running mixed use traffic east of Wake Med, which I'll go into in more detail. And then we have transit signal priority, which will ensure that the rapid part of the BRT is consistent. These are all of our station locations. These circles that have nothing in the middle are there's stations on each side of the median. So I'll go over that in some more detail. These are directional stations because they're one way. Swain and Tarboro, Edenton, Morgan, and Wilmington. So some of the existing conditions right now out on New Bern. It's the eastern gateway to Raleigh. There's a lot of history down New Bern, a lot of residential, but some commercial. It's primarily car oriented. Some of the intersections do have some stormwater flooding issues, and a lot of that can be attributed to the soft shoulder on the side of the road. It's open channel for stormwater drainage now. So we'll address a lot of that through this project as we're constructing curb and gutter along New Bern. And that includes a number of catch basins and buried piped stormwater. There's also a lot of aged water and sewer infrastructure, especially down the Edenton and downtown New Bern section. So we're going to be working with Raleigh Water to replace a number of those water and sewer mains. And as y'all know, it lacks quite a bit of pedestrian and bike infrastructure and ADA accommodations. So some of the improvements associated with this project is the dedicated transit lanes, which I'll show you. That's downtown, and then from Pool to Wake Med. Enhanced stations. These pictures on the right is an example of a station you would see on Edenton, at Swain or Tarboro, with the sidewalk on the backside. Improved drainage, ADA accessibility. So every intersection we're going through will have ADA compliant handicap ramps at all 4 corners, as well as high visibility pavement markings for crosswalks, stop bars. And then so we'll have a multi-use path on the south side of the road. So that basically starts on Morgan and Blunt and runs east all the way to the Sunnybrook intersection consistently the whole way through. Most of it's 12 feet. Some of it fluctuates around 10 just to like constraints, like over by the cemetery on New Bern. We don't really have room to work with there. Quite a bit of water and sewer upgrades and then improving connectivity. So on the north side of New Bern, we'll have our sidewalk that runs from the Tarboro intersection to Millburnie, east of Sunnybrook. And we're picking up there because there's consistent sidewalk from Tarboro to downtown. This is an example of the bus entering and exiting downtown. So enter on Edenton with our station right here, south on Blunt. Move into mixed-use traffic for this last half of Blunt before we go right on Martin. The reason for this is because when the Southern BRT comes online, this bus will continue to head south and there won't be a need for this turn anymore. So instead of bringing specifically our pavement markings through here where reducing the impact for now before we go through there and impact parking and like the bike lane. And then so when you go right on Martin up north on Wilmington, we have our Wilmington Street station, and I'll go through some of the different station types. And then exiting downtown, our station on Morgan, and then we have Swain and Tarboro. So this is the station nomenclature that we're going forward with. You see similar maps at other mass transit areas like in Atlanta for the metro, showing the next station, the next stop, and the direction you're traveling. These also need to fit on the signs we're working with while also maintaining letter sizing to ensure it was large enough to be able to see across the street, but not too big where it impacts our sign. So these are the different types of stations. There's 6 for all of the Wake BRT. We're using 5 on this project. Really the difference between them is like the urban core focuses more on transparency and like pedestrian accessibility downtown. The suburban and intermodal are like on Tarboro and Swain. They're similar to the downtown one, but there's a little more privacy in the back, some of the paneling we're putting up. The split island is the median running stations. We'll look at that in more detail. And then the peripheral is the stations east of 440. Those are much smaller. All these other stations are 75 feet wide to accommodate our 60-foot articulated bus. I don't recall what these are right now, but they're probably half the size. Like the intermodal one, we had to focus a little more on safety because it's in the middle of the meeting. Just an example of the cross section for the different areas. So this one is like you were heading south on Blunt Street. This is what you would be up against. So right now it's parking, general use parking. So we're taking the parking on the west side of the street. And then for the median transit way, we have our bus lanes in the middle of the median now, our general purpose lanes on the outside. And then like for the north, this will be a sidewalk. And then for the south, this will be the multi-use path. And then it fluctuates throughout the project, but we have both concrete and landscaped buffers. So some of the station amenities will include seating, weather protection, all ADA accessibility, boarding, lots of digital signage, real-time arrival info, emergency phone, bike racks. There's an art integration, which I have a slide for that, and then outlets for charging. So this is an example of what the median running station would look like in front of Wake Med. On the virtual open house for our surveys, this is some of the feedback we're soliciting from the public. We're tossing around the idea to maybe slope the canopy, have a double angle slope, and then we also have a couple lighting designs that we're looking into. So please provide your feedback for that. Just some accommodations for the articulated bus. So there is onboard bike storage, wheelchair securement, and then ADA deployable ramps. So at all the stations, besides the ones east of 440, they're going to be 14-inch for that level boarding. So the ramps will have to be utilized east of 440. That's because we're in mixed use. The general speed is higher through there. And NCDOT would require the city of Raleigh to actually have a pullout. So in order to not construct a pullout and significantly reduce the impact in that area, we have to leave the 6-inch curve, and then we'll use the ramps for entering and exiting the station. There's just really not enough room to build pullouts. There would be like pretty large right-of-way takes and significant impact. So we have our artist in residence. It's Dare Coulter. She's working with the city of Raleigh and the consultant to specifically more identify locations of where we want to include art on BRT projects, whether that's incorporating like wayfinding into the multi-use path or sidewalk, or like this picture tagging some of the like fiberglass paneling so it's not clear or cloudy, but it actually looks cool and provides these like a shadow effect, lighting, some other things. So that's also on the virtual open house. You can provide feedback for that. She has a video that goes in more detail. So with the BRT comes its own branding aspect since it's a new transit. So this is what you'll see for all the transit corridors, the north, south, east, and west. So it's going to be orange. We're going to keep with the Go Raleigh name along with the chevrons. This slide shows some of the different designs that we're evaluating. So there's also, this is on the virtual open house website as well with the survey. So please go on there and vote. So which one you like. But there was also quite a bit of like public feedback and engagement prior to this point with the development of these logos. So these slides go into more of the stuff I think BPAC will be more interested in. So that red line right there is our project. So, you know, we have the multi-use path on the south side of New Bern from Morgan all the way to Millburnie right here. This is Millburnie, this is Sunnybrook. So we're, you know, through at least a multi-use path, we're able to connect the Crabtree Creek Trail to the Morgan Street connector and the other ones that head south. And then I zoomed out and took a look at it, and, you know, it really ties in a lot. So I think it's going to be really helpful for those people that actively use a multi-use path and the greenways. So I'll go through a couple of these slides. I get a little technical, but I figured y'all would appreciate it. And when you have questions at the end, I can actually pull up some of the plans and we can go into some more detail if you like. But this is the pavement marking plan for downtown, and on these next slides, I feel like it paints a really clear picture of what the improvements will look like. So we have our station up here with our colored concrete pavement. This will be colored pavement throughout downtown. So at all the intersections, new high visibility pavement markings for the crosswalks, ADA ramps at all corners. I know we have a bike lane that goes south on Blunt that goes like all the way through. So, and that's some of the feedback I'll need from y'all here and what your opinion is. I think I know what you're going to say, but currently we're showing just the bike lane. The bike lane will end here and for the bikes to share the general use lane with the public. But we're also probably going to move forward, at least for right now, having the bicycles share the BRT lane since it's a protected lane. The only caveat with that is I think it's going to work really well now, but as more corridors come online and there's more bus usage through all the pavement markings, that it might get a little compact. You know what I'm saying? Like it's going to get more busy than when we just have one online now. So, and we're also tossing that around the idea of having this shared for the bike and keeping general use through here. So just continuing to move south. So we're picking up right here, south on Blunt as you approach Hargett, all new intersection. And this is when we do our Q jump right here. So we go back into general use and then the bike lane picks back up. That's kind of what I was mentioning before. When the southern corridor comes online, it's just going to be pretty much an extension of this cross section. So the pavement markings will continue like to the south. And we won't have this Q jump anymore. But this is just kind of how it'll work in real time. There's, whoops, sorry about that. There's the BRT will have its own kind of light. It'll say like bus or transit priority signal. So when that turns on, then the bus will go through the intersection, get into general use before these other cars start moving forward. So continuing south, we're going to kick a ride on Martin. You can see our mini skips here in green along with the left lane, like protected left storage area for bikes. Down Martin in general use, and then back up Wilmington, we enter our BRT lane again. So this is our first station on Wilmington. Like we're straightening out this crosswalk, new ramps and pavement markings through the Hargett intersection. And then continuing north, we enter back up here at Morgan and then go right east to head out of downtown. So from the bicycle perspective, as you head east on Morgan, you go through Fayetteville with your skips, you have your bike lane, and then you'll go through the Wilmington intersection, and then we force you to go into the BRT lane. So that is how you get through the Blunt Street intersection, and then we bring you to the multi-use path at this location. It's like right to the north of Marbles, so you can enter the multi-use path. We evaluated like sending the bike and pedestrian traffic behind this BRT station, but at Morgan, there's only 8 feet of sidewalk right here, so we couldn't do it. This is just to show you an example of like a median station. This is in front of Wake Med. This is their emergency ambulance entrance. So for BRT buses going east, you have your station on the east side of the street right here, and then west on the west side. So you'll have all new crosswalks through here. You can see the multi-use path on this side, moving curb and gutter. All these boxes are new catch basins, and then the black lines between them are piped stormwater. From a crosswalk, these can also be used as pedestrian refuges. And just some interesting aspects with these BRT stations is we have to meet, well, really for everything, we have to meet NCDOT design standards because we're in an NCDOT right away. There's a concrete barrier and a crash cushion behind it, so had to focus on safety at these. And this is our like our median separator, so you can see it's concrete through here and then landscape on this side. So this is what we just looked at as from a pavement markings perspective. So this is what the colors will be in front of the stations. And then we have concrete pavement through the intersection as well. So the traffic can kind of differentiate that area is different and not to pull into our BRT lane when making any movements through here. I wanted to show you this because this is an example of a median use running lane in an intersection that doesn't have a BRT stop. So same kind of look, but just missing the BRT stations. And all these will have transit signal priority. And currently, like, I don't think there's a crosswalk north on Shanta, and then we're doing, I believe this is a crosswalk north of here. We also have new crosswalks at Donald Ross and I believe some of the other intersections as well. John can help me with that. Oh yeah, this is just kind of motion to y'all how it's going to work. This is a conceptual rendering of what the finished product would look like in front of Wake Med. So these are our median stations. And really this is pretty accurate in some capacity. Our station design will look very similar to this with our like little statement piece we have in the back, and we're soliciting feedback on what type of materials people would like to see this, color of the station. You can see our protective barrier in the back along with all the bollards, station signing for pedestrians, our crosswalks. And it doesn't currently show it, but this multi-use path continues downtown through here. And our sidewalk. And that was the last slide I have. Be happy to go over or answer any questions or go over any more detail.
We'll open the floor for discussion if anybody has any questions or comments. I can't see everybody's hands at once right now, but I'll keep scrolling through. Ms. Gellenbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Otwell. I do have some questions. Sean, I'm very interested in the infrastructure for bicycle parking, secured bicycle parking. To feed the system, we need the people to be able to access it. And bicycle riding enables people to travel 3 times faster than walking. So I'm anticipating that the system will be fed by people who are choosing to ride in order to shorten the amount of time in their commute. What is the capacity that we're planning for the bicycle parking at the stations, and will it be covered?
And will it be covered? Okay, so I can't at the moment speak to capacity. Eric, John Hornbeck is on the call too. He's our City Raleigh consultant for HNTB. If you could unmute him too, I'm probably gonna have to call him a couple times.
Yeah, the rest of your team is on as panelists now.
Okay, and he may be able to expand. We do have bike racks at the stations, and we are looking at different areas on the multi-use path to maybe put a couple. Regarding if they are covered, I can't recall at the moment because we are looking into some of the stations not extending the canopy all the way across to expose some of the seating to like the sunlight, and that's the area I believe the bike racks are.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. We were talking about you're showing a median station there, so let's talk about that one first. That we would put the bike racks out on the outside, specifically on the multi-use path side, which is the south side. That's actually a good comment and good timing, because to do so, we would need extra room for bicycle parking outside of the multi-use path. Obviously, you don't want the bikes taking part of your multi-use path, so we would need extra right-of-way, if you will, or sidewalk easements for that parking. So that's something we would have to negotiate, and it's not too late because we are just going to kick off the easements and property after 60% has been accepted.
Okay.
So that was kind of the plan for the median stations. And the other stations, like Sean said, it'd be closer to the stations because the stations are on the outside. But I do not believe any of it was being discussed as being covered, but maybe that's a conversation I missed.
Mm-hmm. Have you?
And Mary Jo, you used the term secure parking, and I don't believe that we at this time are proposing any type of locker systems throughout any of our bike system at all.
Okay. Have they talked about capacity? How many bikes can be parked?
I have not heard that discussion, but that would be a good variable to lock down the need and demand.
Mm-hmm. And whatever number they mention, I wouldn't double it. Because it isn't a matter of the current need. It's about when the system starts to take off, when people start to be confident that they can use it and get to their destinations and return, then they're going to talk amongst their friends and their family and their neighbor. And you're going to, inevitably, it's going to double, especially as our population increases. So that's my recommendation for that. So thank you so much for asking.
Quick question I have, given that there's bus availability on the bus or on the transit, do you think more people would still park their bike at their station where they're boarding as opposed to bringing it with them and, you know, parking it somewhere on their destination end?
I do, because what I'm anticipating is that the bicycle is going to be used from their, and this is from their home, their residence, to get to the station. And they're going to get off the station that's probably going to be closest to their final destination. Plus, most of the, I understand that Citric Cycle is also expanding that. I mean, it should be within walking distance from it. But I think the biggest distance, the feed, is going to be from your residence to the station. There's no driving to the bus station, unless you're talking about the stations that are outside the 440. Then possibly there will be parking there. But these ones that are inside 440, they're all going to be accessed by foot or pedal. And if there's only 2 slots on the bus for bicycles and that's been filled, then you really need to, that puts the commuter in a pickle. Do they wait for the next bus? It's just not, it's not conducive to thinking about their experience.
And for that one, I want to kick that over to Mila Vega. Mila's a senior planner that's working on the transit project. And Mila, I don't know if we approached that from a policy standpoint as far as would the larger articulated buses, if the bicycle storage slots are full, will there still be the ability to allow the bicycles to be carried onto the buses at that point?
That's a good question. I think we'll have to address it. Obviously, the intent is to provide service to people who are waiting for it and not say, sorry, we have no space. You'll have to just, hang out there. That's a good comment. We are going to start looking into policies associated with BRT to address an array of questions like that because this is something new. So we'll just add that to our laundry list of things that we need to work through. But we definitely appreciate this comment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to talk about the width of the crosswalk. Is there, having a real significant size crosswalk definitely identifies that space visibly to drivers. And I'm curious to know about its width. Can it accommodate both people who are walking their bikes, riding their bikes, and people who are walking, people who are in wheelchairs? There's multiple modes of people are trying to get to this system. You know that the width of them?
Yeah, so all the crosswalk widths are 8 feet wide. John, I don't believe there are any intersections where it's wider than that. But per NTCD, that should suffice.
The crosswalks, but the multi-use path is full width, which typically is 12.
That's right.
But we do have some areas where it goes down to 10. But the crosswalks crossing across the road to the medians, yes.
Okay. When I look at the drawing, I see multiple lanes of vehicles that I've got to travel in front of. And I would really feel much more secure if the crosswalk was bolder, wider, accommodating the people, just to, again, bring equity for that mode of transportation into the overall arching design of travel. We want to have equality between vehicle drivers and people who are walking from those scopes. So that's really important to me. And at those intersections where the median bus terminals are, I don't know if this is the conversation to have it, but no turn on red should be applied. That those signs should be in place. The vehicles should be paused and stopped, and in that enabling everybody to be able to comfortably walk and roll over the crosswalks to their to get to the multimodal pads or the sidewalks. So yeah, I don't know if this is the place to bring it up.
Yes, this is exactly the place to have that conversation. Sean, at this point, we've got traffic marking plans, but I don't think we've done signage or control plans yet for the intersections, have we?
We do. So just real quick, so along the multi-use path, like on the south side of New Bern, so all these intersections will have 12 feet for this crossing. And then eight for the rest, and then 8 for the sidewalk on the north side.
Well, if we couldn't increase that, it would make me much more confident.
What was the direct question regarding signage? The no rights on red?
Yeah, if we've made a determination from a policy standpoint, if we're going to apply that through the corridor.
John, I haven't dove into the signage plans enough to know the answer to that question.
Doesn't ring a bell. Let me look up. I don't think they would have addressed that, but let me see. I don't think that's been implemented.
I appreciate you guys looking into it. And my final comment is when I was looking at the lanes that were in downtown, and Sean, you had described them as protected vehicle lanes for the bus riders. I mean, you described them as protected. How are they protected so that motor vehicles cannot enter the space and park?
They're not. A motor vehicle can enter the space if they wish and park. They're not supposed to, but that's going to come down to an enforcement thing once the BRT is put online. which is why we're working really closely with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance and parking to dive into the parking impacts and loading zone impacts for specifically downtown, and making sure that those areas that now have lost parking, like through here, have, the loading zones and parking spaced out evenly enough between all these areas. I called it protected because it's protected through like the BRT standpoint, because that's the only vehicle that's allowed in there. But if we allow bikes, then it'll be protected for bikes and BRT vehicles.
Sean, I think the term you're looking for is restricted. When we talk about protected facilities, there's usually the inclusion of a barrier, which I don't think there's no barriers associated with this project. There's no bollards or anything separating the bus lanes from the travel lanes, correct?
Correct. There's nothing like that.
So I think restricted is probably the more applicable term. The other thing, Ms. Kellenbeck, is you'll note that we are showing the bus lanes with a red designation. And Sean, that will be actually applied as part of the pavement marking for the project, that these bus lanes will be red, correct?
Yeah, John, I don't want to mess this up. So this is concrete pavement, right, in front of the BRT stations, and is that red asphalt?
Yeah, so the asphalt there is shown, if you zoom in, it's like an asphalt pattern, and it's a slightly different shade of red just for to indicate that red is going to be embedded into the concrete. So they're going to mix it in and then skim on top so that you can't see the aggregate, and it'll be more permanent in that it won't have to be reapplied. It'll weather with the concrete. The rest is going to be a product that we're still researching to get the best product, the longest lasting product, but it will be applied to the asphalt.
I have a little concern that they're not protected, only from watching previous cities that have implemented BRTs and seeing that the red is not necessarily going to reserve the space. And so it does create the barriers, or it blocks the free flow of the system. And so is it that we're kind of exploring this protected lane? We're going to first put it in restricted, see how the public generally falls in line with it, and then put up protected barriers because it's not being respected?
Yeah, I think it's something we might have to reevaluate, but I do want to note that, a lot of it isn't protected like bollards all the way across, because there is parking in some areas on the other side of the BRT lane. So not so much on Blunt, but there is on Wilmington through here on the right side of the street. There's also like right here from Morgan, which is for the time being another reason why this is just open.
The other thing that we're dealing with this project, this is a retrofit within an existing environment. And in downtown Raleigh, we do have a number of driveway cuts. I'll point out that the official reference to these types of lanes, they're known as BAT lanes. So they're business access and transit lanes. So we will allow for right turning traffic to enter into these lanes to be able to make a right turn. And that is actually technically safer for buses and for cyclists if they're not creating a crossing stream, that they would integrate into that lane and make that right turn, either for a major intersection or for a driveway. So there'd be some restrictions in those situations as far as where we can apply bollards or not.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would just
go ahead, John.
I was just going to point out where we could protect it, we did, and that's from Poole to Sunnybrook. I know you're probably most interested in the downtown area, but the tight right of way, the existing laneage and stuff made us we had to scale back and go with the BAT lanes, if you will. But from Poole all the way to Sunnybrook, it's in the protected median.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that goes into designing it, and I'm really excited for Raleigh that it's coming in, so it's really cool.
Thank you. Us too.
Thank you for those comments. In particular, the no turn on red comment is very welcome. It touches on one of the issues I was going to bring up was the speed in the BRT lanes, and some of the information that Mr. Tong had provided to us talking about the applicability of sharing the bike travel with the BRT lanes, said that it was recommended for facilities that are 20 miles an hour and less. And I think that some of those streets hit 25 miles an hour where we're downtown proposing sharing lanes on Blunt Street. Is that correct, or do I have?
Okay, so I do want to note that really the only area we're talking about sharing lanes here is here downtown, like only on Blunt, and then only this section of Martin. But once we move east, we're expecting the bike traffic to enter the multi-use path, you know. So I'm not considering any bike traffic in the BRT lane east of Blunt Street.
Okay.
But John, can you speak to, we haven't talked about the 20 or 25 difference yet for bikes in the BRT lane on Blunt or Wilmington?
Let me look, because typically, let me see what we had in our design.
So, Mr. Otwell, you're asking if it's 25 miles per hour, then there might be concern with bikes using that lane?
Well, I was just going to ask if it's 25 miles an hour that as part of your policy considerations that we could look at lowering those to 20 miles an hour.
Okay.
And I'd also encourage you to consider that I do think bikes will be using the lanes outside of the of where we intend them to. So I know that it might not be part of what we designed for in policy, but I would encourage you to keep it in mind as to what the actual usage is going to look like.
I think the 20 miles per hour that I quoted was the operating speed. So the speed limit may be higher, but the speed at which the buses are operating.
Thank you for clearing that.
Yeah.
But
so what I would say is we typically considered very few things downtown had like a design speed associated for us, because we were just striping lanes, doing very little design work. The only thing that really comes into play is like you have a lane shift in the taper link. And we were doing things at like a 35 mile an hour, not to say like you were implying, you know, that buses are going to go that fast, or you can even get that fast from light to light. But we had not considered mixed use and design speed consideration like you're raising.
One of the things that we've been pushing for on this commission have been the considerations of design maximums. And we understand the concept of design minimums and where they're required, but for these kind of facilities where we're trying to keep folks from going too fast, we encourage people to consider what the design maximum what the implications of the design maximum are. So I'll just get that out there before Vice Chair Alley can get to it later.
Well, Mr. Otwell, that would be a difficult conversation in this specific context, because most of the streets that are downtown, they're straight and flat. So when we're talking about elements from a design speed conversation, those design criteria apply to curvature and to crest and sag. So theoretically, in the case where you have a straight flat section of highway or street, that's inherently a much higher design speed. So we wouldn't be able to alter the physical characteristics of the street grid that we have here. Where it's metered is by the fact that we have a tight grid, that we have on-street parking and other friction factors that keep it in a downtown environment operating relatively slow.
Okay. Thank you. I'm scrolling through. I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. If I don't see, please speak up. If anybody has any more comments. I believe Ms. Barsness has her hand up.
Thanks. I had a quick question. I don't recall. Do you hear an echo?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So when I was looking at the plans for the majority of it, when it's on New Bern Avenue, my question is so there's the multi-use path on the south side. I think you said, and on the north side it's the sidewalk, but I didn't see any bike lane on that north side. So are bikes going to just be on the south side multi-use path, going in opposite directions?
Yes. Yes, we are anticipating that all bike traffic should use the multi-use path within that area.
Okay. How wide is that multi-use path going to be?
It's 12 feet for a majority of it. There are some areas where we're kind of constrained between just some of the limits. It might go down to 10 in a couple areas, but for the most part, it's 12.
Okay.
And that's so as you enter, so if you're on New Bern and say you're approaching the Tarboro or Swain station on New Bern, there's going to be 12 feet of multi-use path behind the station as well. So it's not like constricted there either.
Okay.
And then, John, I was just going to say, and then as you're like, if you're on Edenton, approaching the Swain or Tarboro station, that sidewalk on the back side of the station is 7 feet currently.
Okay.
So there should be, consistent access around those.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The only thing I was going to add is that when I discussed this previously, this is for the casual to mid-level bikes, not like a Lance Armstrong, and they might still be in the general use lanes, if you will.
I believe Vice Chair Alley had a question or a comment.
Thanks, Dwight. I had a couple comments. First, generally, really pleased with what I see, so thank you for taking our previous comments into consideration while you guys design. On the intersections, wanted to further Mary Jo's request about the no right turn and even consideration of LPIs. Maybe no big buttons would be awesome. I noticed some of those in the renderings. I don't know if they were intentional or not. So just having automatic crossings, especially where there's a station, without having to press the button to actuate the cross. And then just a consideration for the visual barriers that happen in a two-phase crossing. Like if you were crossing at a station, but you weren't going to the station, making sure that like the vertical design elements and any kind of other, even if they're like waist level, right, that would obscure a wheelchair. So any kind of poles, meter boxes, things like that, trying to make it so that we have kind of maximum pedestrian visibility. And then on the pathway, I was really heartened to see what looks like bump outs in the core downtown to be able to fit these kind of premier stations in while leaving what looks like almost the entire sidewalk intact behind it. So I just wanted to put in a plea in downtown and in the rest of the corridor if NCDOT allows for street trees and a focus on lighting and the condition behind the station to make sure that like, I know you were showing one of the artists had like the reflection through the colored plexi onto the sidewalk, and I think that's a lovely idea. So making sure that we're like using SEPTEB principles and not creating unsafe spaces. I know that like in Richmond, there are a couple of spots where it feels kind of creepy behind the station. Awesome within the station, but if you were just walking past, it felt a little bit difficult. And then finally, a request for ramp type driveways where we can for both the sidewalk and the multi-use path for the entirety of the corridor. And then along with that, seeing if we can minimize, if not eliminate, the slip turn lane. I know there's one at Sunnybrook. That's it. Thank you so much for your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. Alley. Were there any more comments or questions? I'm not seeing any hands as I scroll through. Mr. Caruso, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple questions. On the Edenton section, it looks like in the engineering drawings that the bus lane is going to be on the right side, but then we also have parking effectively inside the bus lane. So the parking and the bus lane are on the same curb. I was wondering why that is, because it looks like going eastbound on Newbern, you have the bus lane on the inside curb and then parking on the opposite curb. So I was just kind of wondering if you could provide some information on why that is. Kind of the reason I'm wondering is that I think having separated like that will provide a nice side benefit of performing traffic calming, because I know on the sidewalk, if you're on Edenton, the south side sidewalk is going to have traffic, 2 or 3 feet next to you, going at, unfortunately, a fairly high rate of speed. So if we could have parking on that side, that would provide a nice buffer from traffic. So I was just wondering if you could provide some information on why that was done that way.
John, can you help me answer that question?
Yeah, I started. I was on mute. Hey, can you go to the one station that you just showed? Where Edenton Station? There. Maybe zoom in on that if you can. So, for one reason, first off, we were doing very little work on Edenton. So we were just trying to do the minimal amount to get the stations in, but you can see the bulb outs for the station actually occupy the parking. So we stopped the parking so that we can fit the station, so that we can fit sidewalk behind the station. And so that's one reason. The second reason is often on Edenton, this road's been overpaved so many times that the outside lane of Edenton is sloped at a significantly higher percent than you'd want to drive on. And so it might be up to 8% in many cases, whereas the travel lanes, you want between, say, you want them at 2%, but some of these roads are a little bit crowned, if you will. So 2 to 4% is probably suitable for driving, but 8% would require, building up and whole elevation difference. So those two reasons are predominantly the reasons why and the parking already is on the north side. Right. Okay. And just, I was just noticing as you were zooming in there, is the idea that most or nearly most of the corridor is going to be an 11-foot travel lane? I thought I saw some renderings a while back that showed a 12-foot lane in some spots. After we met with DOT, we had to, the early concepts had, some bus lanes at 12 and others at 10, but we had to kind of average everything at 11, and that's what fits most everywhere. So most of the lanes are 11, both general use and the BRT. Okay. And then I noticed as you're going through the slides, it looks like the station at Wake Med was consolidated, I suppose. Yep. The 30% showed 2 stations there, and now I see just 1. So I was just wondering if you could kind of talk about that. Yeah. Obviously, I kind of have a little bit of concern about, kind of the inherent nature of the passengers that are going to have limited mobility for some of them. So, yeah, that's a very astute comment, and that's actually very interesting you picked that up. Yeah, it's absolutely true. So right now, and we met with Wake Med and talked about their needs and their uses, and we had some safety concerns on the Sunnybrook. There was a station on West Campus and Sunnybrook, not one on East Campus. And the Sunnybrook, on the far side of Sunnybrook, where one of the stations was going to be, first off, the speeds pick up east of Sunnybrook greatly. Cars are coming in from I-440 very quickly, and the grade drops off at 4 to 5%. And we couldn't get a station flat enough that would provide good accessibility for people to load. So that was one concern we had. And then by consolidating the station, the area right in front of where it is now, East Campus, kind of, when we looked at it and talked to the hospital, they're like, that probably does make more sense from a a standard and a use of, where people are trying to go. The one on Sunnybrook was a little far east. The one on West Campus, I think they liked, but east and west would have been too close together. And so in consultation with them, talking about their needs, talking about our desires to make them safe, we kind of consolidated to East Campus with their approval or their concurrence, if you will. Did I leave anything out, Sean?
No, that was good. The hospital was concerned that the West Street station was going to have very minimal ridership there, and preferred and liked the idea to have it consolidated at East Street. And I do want to note that we have had extensive conversations with the signage at this intersection with both the hospital and NCDOT to ensure that the emergency signs are still very visible. And recently NCDOT has approved that we can put emergency signage on the mast arms at this location. So currently, like, all there is there's two signs over here as you approach, and then like a little Wake Med one. So we're going to have more emergency entrance signage at this intersection. So like our stations don't impact any of that.
Okay. Yeah, and I was now looking at this again. I would just like to echo the comments before about I think this one certainly needs a right turn restriction, just due to how much traffic there's probably going to be, and that there's 4 lanes in one direction at this intersection. So I mean, hopefully we can have it at other places, but I think this one should certainly be towards the top of the list for consideration. And then kind of my last major comment or concern is, and I don't know if you have any slides or imagery or anything on this, but the section east of the Beltline from the Beltline to New Hope, do you have any more kind of diagrams or imagery of what that's going to look like? Because I think part of the presentation said it was going to be a median station, but I mean, I assume it's going to be on the outside shoulder. So, and do we know where the stations are going to be located? And I mean, I have a number of questions kind of all related to this.
Yeah. Well, Sean's bringing it up. They're all on the outside now. The median stations just proved to be too problematic, and DOT. This is, if anything, this character of the road is truly an arterial, 45, 50 miles an hour, 50 design speed, 45 posted. And so all the stations are on the outside, and he's brought it up. So I'll let Sean kind of walk you through. And the locations where they can be along the road are very challenging because there's so much businesses and so little room for some of them.
Yeah, these were hard to find areas that would work. This is our Treywick station, eastbound and westbound toward the Treywick intersection. The next couple slides will have the corporation stations. And then, not part of this project, but Transit is developing a parking ride station right here at New Hope. So this will be like a large parking lot and like a little station for drivers with like accommodations for them. But so the public can park and ride here. And then we also are redoing this station at Walmart up here in the corner. So this is what, so this is our corporation stations, and they have sidewalks behind them as well. And then this will be the park and ride area. And this is a pull out. So I believe we're gonna have level boarding here and then in the Walmart station.
Okay. So, I mean, that's part of my question also. So, so the route is basically going to follow similar to how the 15 goes now, where it's going to go and then turn left onto New Hope and then go into the Walmart and turn around, or and then hit that transit center, or is it going to go back down Corporation like it does now?
So it's going to go around and hit the transit center and then get back on New Bern at the New Hope intersection. And then
Okay.
you'll pick up the Corporation stop and then Trawick stop. And then the next one is Wake Med.
Okay.
And this is kind of what these stations look like. This is Trawick eastbound. So it's, I mean, the private utility relocations at these sites are going to be beyond extensive for all locations, as you can see through here. But it's hard to find room within this whole area. I assure you, we evaluated like every square foot of the stretch between New Hope and 440 and working with NCDOT, and this is where we came up with. But they're a little bit smaller stations. Trawick westbound. We have to buy right away through here, and there's a retaining wall. And this is what
that's in
this
front
is
of the
kind of what Eric was referring to with the bat lane, it being mixed use with general traffic and transit.
Okay, but I mean, like my understanding is that that's only really going to be the station stop, though. I mean, like general traffic is going to be traveling through that lane in front of the station, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's real. I mean, it's not so much a lane as it's a bus stop location.
Yeah, it's going to be similar to like the way the bus stops at the stations there now. It's in general use with mixed traffic, and it's just going to stop in the mixed traffic lane, let people get on, and then keep going.
Okay, and then one specific intersection in this area that I know we're not doing a lot of kind of capital moving of sidewalks and stuff like that, but one thing hopefully can be integrated is the intersection at Corporation Parkway on the north side. It has a double right turn, and I have a very hard time believing that that's actually necessary given the traffic in that area. So I hope we can do something to drop that to a single right turn, because I mean that crosswalk across Corporation there on the north side is extremely long, and you have the kind of shadowing effect where you have the double right turn, so your people are often occluded by the inside turning car. Yeah, there on the north side there.
Right here.
No, on the Corporation. Yeah,
southbound. Yeah, that's a reasonable request.
Yeah. So at that intersection, there's two right turn lanes. For, in my opinion, quite a low volume of cars actually turning. So if we could do something there, I think that would be really beneficial. Yeah. Yeah, it has a high, I believe it has a high vis crosswalk now, but as you can kind of see, that crosswalk is, I would say, probably just eyeballing it, probably over 100 feet long. So it's very uncomfortable to try to get across there. And then just kind of a more general issue. As you kind of mentioned before, this stretch from the Beltline back to New Hope is certainly an arterial and as you mentioned, extremely high speed, with a speed limit of 45 and an actual speed of 50 plus. So I'm trying to understand kind of mainly why we can't, especially on the north side going westbound, there's 4 through lanes for general traffic. So I'm really kind of would like to understand why we can't have at least like the right turn shared lane. So you still have 3 through lanes, and then you have a shared use right turn and bus lane. Because obviously having people waiting at the station or even just walking along the sidewalk with cars moving past you at 50 miles an hour is certainly not safe or comfortable. So with so many general use lanes there, I would really like to see some improvement on adding a buffer there.
So I can tell you we had that conversation with DOT, and we even looked at what we could do. That fourth lane gets added at before the first Walmart exit, if you will. There is when the fourth lane gets added. And due to the length of that lane, because we were trying to treat that lane as what's called an aux lane, which is basically not a general use lane. And with an aux lane, you can take the clear zone from the edge of the through lane, which is the third lane. And DOT balked at that, and they said, no, because of its length, and this is a thing, because of its length, motorists will not treat it as an aux lane, they'll treat it as a general use lane. And they were interpreting that it was actually a fourth general use lane. So they weren't balking on any kind of setback or reduction or any of the things you mentioned as, which might make sense in another corridor. Like example, at Edenton and New Bern downtown, or the pool, they actually allowed us to take over a third lane because the traffic demand wasn't as high, the character road was different. But east of 440, DOT was not having any of that. So we did have those conversations.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could you explain that the first part again? I'm not understanding why people would be confused. Like I'm saying, like if you paint the whole thing red and then at the turning locations you make it striped, saying, "Hey, you can turn here." I don't understand how people would somehow be confused by that.
You're talking east of I-440?
East of the belt line. If you take that north side lane and make it red, except for where you would turn at the driveways and the intersections, I'm trying to understand what you mean by how drivers would somehow be confused by that.
No, well, first off, we're not going to paint them red. DOT won't allow them. So we're in mixed use here. So it's not going to be a bat lane. It's just going to be mixed use with stops. But also what I said was that the users of the road will not only go in that lane for turning, they're going to use it as a general use because of its length. So that's what I meant. So cars will get over to the right and stay in it longer than you might think, or go through where they can because of its length. So that's what I meant by, they're not going to treat it as just like a right turn in, right turn out lane. They're going to treat it as a through lane. And DOT also saw it as a through lane. So they were not willing to give up that capacity of that lane. And then as you get to I-440 and Traywick, you got a lot of turn lanes and you start to get that, people trying to get over to the right, et cetera.
So, Mr. Ursa, it's our intent that right now with the phase one project, the fixed route system ends at Sunnybrook. We're extending the service out to New Hope, but officially the fixed route portion of the project ends at Sunnybrook. And that was intentional on our part because of the difficulties of retrofits with the bridges over Crabtree Creek, the retrofits required with the I-440 interchange. And so we see that long-term as a phase two project that will be able to get into that with a bigger scope, that eventually the system will extend beyond New Hope and out into Nightdale. And it's at that time that we'll look at creating the dedicated lanes within the median that extend the median-based system that we've got east of or west of Sunnybrook. So we'll get into reworking much of this portion of New Bern Avenue with the next phase of the project.
Okay. I'm not going to cut off discussion, but I'm going to jump in real quick. Vice Chair Alley has sent me a message and asked to be excused for the remainder of the meeting. And so I would like to go ahead and make that motion. If somebody could second that for me.
I'll second.
Thanks.
Thanks. And all in favor?
And I'll give a parting comment before I log off. We just, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, we just went through the sidewalk prioritization and looking at social vulnerability indexes and knowing where social services locations, homeless shelters are locating east of 440 and where hotels are being used as homes. If there was any place that would be prioritized for pedestrian safety, it should be east of 440. And I mean, it's a darn shame that NCDOT is prioritizing cars over our most vulnerable street users. So I hope we can convince our elected officials at the local level to prioritize this safety enhancements, whether that's through a phase 2 BRT or just additional funding for street safety. So thanks. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Do we? That's
Mr.
actually
Otwell, you can take a vote. Yeah. Well, you're muted, sir.
All in favor, raise your hand, please. Let me scroll through. I can't get the grid view when we got a presentation going on. I think that's unanimous. Thank you, all of you generous people. Motion passes, and we'll see Miss Alley next time. Mr. Crusoe, I did not mean to cut you off. Mr. Lamb, having your robust discussion, please continue.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I as far as this, I mean, I just want to, I think Miss Alley covered it very succinctly. I would just like to make the same comment, you know, acknowledging that we have to abide by the state DOT rules and regulations. I think it is inappropriate that we are having this section stay a mixed use or a whatever we call it facility and not providing a lane because this area is very hostile to anybody that's not in a car and will continue to be until something is done about it. So I think my comment would be is that I would like to see at a minimum on the north side where there's four lanes of traffic, I would like to see a lane added there, a bus lane added there as a mechanism to create a buffer between extremely high speed traffic and people on the sidewalk and waiting for the bus. One other thing real quick is I wanted to ask about kind of street trees and those types of things. And I don't know if you've done this level of analysis yet. This might be like final design type of stuff, but especially in the section where we have the center transitway, I assume that we're going to effectively remove all of the trees that are in the center median in that section, which, you know, is unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. So I kind of wanted to know what we have planned for that, and are there plans to kind of have street trees kind of lining the transitway and just what we have so far and kind of what's planned in the future, if that analysis has been done already.
So we are, now that we're at the advanced design stage, we are working with Susan to look more in depth at what the landscaping plan will look like. We won't be able to have street trees within the transit median running way buffer area, but we are utilizing some green stormwater infrastructure at a few locations where the grade is conducive. We're up against, since it is an NCDOT right away, we're up against the NCDOT clear zone requirements on the backside of curb. So we're working with Susan on where we do have areas on like the backside of multi-use path to try to put in and back as much landscaping as possible.
Okay. What is or will be the design speed for New Bern kind of between Raleigh Boulevard and Sunnybrook? Is it going to stay 45?
Yes.
It is. It's designed 50, posted 45. We are moving the where the speed limit changes to east of Raleigh. Currently it's at west of Raleigh. But we are keeping the speed the same. We are going to curb and gutter though, which should do some to slow traffic down instead of flush curb, if you will. So we are going curb and gutter, which should have some traffic calming, but the speed limit's going to be the same.
Before we move on, I think that the tree question was touched on something that's really important to a lot of us. I wanted to make sure if anybody had a follow-up or another question about the street tree issue. I know Commissioner Alley would have something to say about street trees where she's still here. So I'll go ahead and voice that, yeah, we really try to get those in as much as possible. We understand the frustration with trying to do so with the clear zone and the working with the DOT. So thank you for your efforts on that.
So one thing I will say is that, you know, many of those trees are currently in the clear zone, so DOT wouldn't allow them to go back. The other thing is the tree, typically 4 inches diameter is the size of tree that might be considered. Now, whether, you know, where it can be, you know, we're still working out, and we still have to coordinate with forestry and others. So we're just now that 60s just are in the process of getting approved by DOT, now we're going to move on to the next phase, which is, you know, some of these details.
Thank you. Mr. Caruso, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had anything else.
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I could continue to ask questions all night, I assume, but just as a final comment, as far as this last item here, I mean, again, acknowledging that we have to work within the DOT requirements, I would personally like to see a speed limit reduction between Raleigh Boulevard and Sunnybrook to 35 miles an hour, both from a safety perspective on the stations that are going to be sitting in the median, and also if we did that, theoretically we would be able to add more street trees, is my understanding. So I just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gellenbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Otwell, for noticing me. Yeah, I do want to also just add to the conversation the extreme need for lighting to increase safety for persons like myself, females. I am a victim of whose families, one of my siblings was kidnapped by a predator criminal and ultimately took her life. And so can you kind of talk about what type of lighting, you know, potentially the dark sky lighting component, so that we don't have light pollution, but we are illuminating the sidewalks and the multi-use pathways that people are using to access the stations?
Well, I'll start if you want to add, but so now that we're at the 65% stage, we have engaged Duke Energy, and there's a number of poles, especially on the south side of New Bern, that are going to have to get relocated due to the construction of the multi-use path. And in doing so, we will reset poles and also establish new lighting through the corridor through there. So, and John and I will look into the spacing, and we'll work with Duke Energy to ensure that it's going to need to meet all their new requirements or their existing requirements. So, you know, rest assured that the sidewalk and multi-use path will be very lit. And when we do get those final plans from Duke Energy, they work with Pike, we can share those with the BPAC committee, so you guys can see where that lighting is going to go.
Excellent. And also visibility. The multi-use path is much like a greenway system. So we've been talking about increasing safety on the greenway trail system, and visibility sight lines is extremely important for a female user. It definitely increases our sense of security that we can when we have a good sight lines.
Ms. Gellenbeck, you specifically mentioned dark skies. The city of Raleigh is partners with Duke Energy to comply with the Dark Skies Initiative. All of our fixtures are now full cut off and have been for the last 15 plus years.
Oh, really?
So, With the exception of some of the decorative lighting fixtures in downtown, all of our standard cover heads are full cutoff fixtures that comply with that standard.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. I like hearing those things. Yeah, and thank you again, everyone.
I think that we're going to go ahead and wrap up comments on this discussion. Is there anything in particular that you guys are looking for as a formal response, or look to see this again sometime in the future?
Eric, can you help me? Can you help me with that? Do I get a formal response from y'all?
Historically, our practice has been that the city is seeking endorsement from the commission regarding the state of the design of the project. If there are qualifiers that the commission would like to add, that is the prerogative of the commission. Typically, we like to, when we make these final presentations to the city council, note that we have shown these to various city boards, commissions, and outside feedback and gotten buy-in. So I think the commission offered some very valuable feedback tonight, and certainly things that we can take into account with the design process. But overall, I think we're looking to see if we can get the commission's endorsement on the project as it stands.
Thank you.
So I was pretty happy with this, with the presentation and things the way they stood. So I'll look to the members that had the most questions. Mr. Caruso, Ms. Gellenbach, how do you feel about endorsing this plan? Would you be willing to make a motion to do that?
I feel like if we can, I would like to bring this back next month. I mean, I'm fine with kind of an endorsement overall, but I feel like there's a number of comments from myself and others that I think that we should include in a more detailed recommendation versus just a blanket endorsement of the entire project. So if we can bring it back next month, just for in between now and then, we can create some type of letter or memo or whatever, and then just bring it back next month for approval of that, if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah, in the past, we've definitely made endorsements with the caveat that we ask for special attention to be paid to such and such issues. So I think that's totally in line. And unless Eric or any of our BRT designers have any issues with that, I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah, that's fine. And I wrote as much of y'all's comments down as possible, but if you could send me that formal list, then John and I can take some time to look at it and review. So we'll try to do next month, but we may need a little more time. So it might be like the month after.
Oh, to be clear, I don't think that I was asking, and I don't mean to speak for Mr. Caruso, but I wasn't asking for your time to come back and respond. I was going to say that we generally like most of what we see, but we have some very specific concerns, and we'd be happy to endorse and also write down our concerns and give them to you. So I don't know if we need to ask for your time to make changes and come back to us that quickly.
Well, Mr. Otwell, I think there are items here that we can address in short order and bring those back with responses at your next meeting.
Well, then by all means, that would be excellent. All right. Well, if everybody's okay with that, I think we'll go forward with that plan. All right, I'm not hearing anybody.
Oh, Mr. Otwell, I'm good with that.
All right. Great. Thank you. All right. Well, I believe that we don't need a vote to wrap up that item on the agenda. So if that's all, we will say thank you, everybody, for this presentation. That was, your responses have been wonderful. Look forward to working on this in the future. And I will wish you a good evening, and we will wrap up the rest of our meeting on our next agenda items.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Hornbeck. And there was a couple other folks on the line that I don't think that I got to thank. There's some staff members. Ms. Finnegan is there, and Mr. Huffer. And Mr. Oh, I'm going to mess up Benjamin's last name so badly. Mr. Poseel. But thank you.
That's correct.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, great. Next up on the agenda, we're going to try to roll and see if we can actually get out of here by 8. So if we need to take a break, send me a message, but we're going to try to knock this one out. Coming up next is the chair's report. And I'd like to talk to Mr. Neptune, Ms. Hatchell. I was going to take this time to speak a little bit about the Greenway plan. If one of you guys would like to take that up instead in the general comments or as part of your reports. You know as much as I do about that. Maybe we could just have that as part of our general board comments. So, yeah, I'm so sorry. Thinking this out as the meeting goes, which probably should have been done ahead of time. But so the chair has no report. And so let's turn it over to the committees. And we'll start with Mr. Neptune and the Outreach Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Otwell. I'm happy to share that the Outreach and Engagement Committee has had a robust month of activity, given that this is National Bike Month. We kicked things off at the top of the month with our State Street pop-up. Big thanks to city staff. Big thanks to Oaks and Spokes and the volunteers who came out to set up the State Street pop-up. I think it was a phenomenal opportunity to get out into the community. Of course, ride our bikes, but also really to engage and listen to folks from the surrounding neighborhoods and get a feel for, what the reaction, response, and interest might be in that improvement in infrastructure. And as it happens, I could probably go on for some time here speaking about it, but we've gotten some positive feedback on it. Very happy to say, and I think that Paul Black is still in the process of receiving survey feedback. Paul can certainly speak to that if you'd like, but I do believe staff is still in the process of receiving feedback from the surveys and et cetera. But just sort of speaking anecdotally and speaking from direct experience, with folks who live out that way during the pop-up, so far so good. There are folks coming through who appreciate it. I received an email where one of the residents had some kids come up and ask her about what happened to the pop-up. Where did the bicycle lane go? So, it's really been neat to see the reception, kind of all ages reception to the pop-up bike lane. The following weekend, we had members of the commission getting out with our parks maintenance team to clean up along the Greenway, along Little Rock Trail, near the Walnut Creek Wetland Center. And that was, of course, I think the first occasion for many of us commissioners to get out and see each other in public since the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that for those of us who were able to make it, I believe we all had a good time seeing each other, being with each other, and of course cleaning up along the Greenway, doing some direct service with our community. And I suspect we'll organize that maybe one more time this year. Last but not least, at our outreach committee last week, we finally got the conversation started. Now that we're halfway through Bike Month, we're starting to talk about celebrating our pedestrian infrastructure and looking toward Walktober. So I think we've got about 5 or so months to kind of gear up for all of that. But as I think Ms. Person reminded us, those 5 months will fly by. So we're starting now with drafting plans and potential activities for October. But we very much intend to have just as full and active a month celebrating our pedestrian infrastructure and improvements as we have with the bicycle month. So that is the report from Outreach. Oh, wait, I want to make one quick comment. I could spend probably 30 minutes to an hour thanking a lot of people for all the volunteers and for all the commission members who've come out over the course of Bike Month thus far. But I would like to take a moment to especially acknowledge Commissioner Gellenbeck, Mary Jo, who spent an enormous amount of time and energy setting up this traffic garden as a part of the State Street pop-up. That was a wonderful compliment and an example and a demonstration of a very sort of, just a terrific approach at setting up, an environment where the kids could come through, get a feel for, real cycling infrastructure along with mom and dad, along with, brother and sister, and sort of learning together, engaging together, and having fun together, and really planting the seeds as it relates to, the sort of culture of cycling. I mean, that is the future. Sustainable transportation is the future. Multimodal, sustainable transportation is the future, right? And it really meant a lot to me, and I know a number of the folks from city staff and the commission and from Oaks and Spokes. I know it meant a lot to the folks from the community who were able to get out and experience it, the traffic garden and all the work that Mary Jo put into that. So just a special shout out and thank you to Mary Jo for all of her work. So that is the outreach report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neptune. I appreciate your words.
Yeah, big hoorah. Thank you. All right, next up we have Mr. Tong with the Planning Committee.
The Planning Committee met before this meeting, and we talked about bicycle wayfinding signs for some of the neighborhood bikeways that will be rolled out in the coming year or two. We talked about stuff like sign spacing and what destinations we want to see on these signs. And we got Paul some feedback, and think he's going to refine some of those, and we will continue the discussion at the next meeting next month.
Thank you very much. And I was filling in for Ms. Alley at the last policy meeting. So for the policy meeting report, we were going to have a discussion about leading pedestrian intervals, and the discussion ended up being a much broader in range. We got a presentation, or we had a discussion with Jed Neffenegger from the Transportation Department, discussing the state study that has been, the North Carolina study that has been going on around transportation safety in downtown Raleigh. And so that is starting to bear some fruit and is looking very promising. So it's a series of studies and recommendations on how to improve pedestrian safety. And originally they were just looking right around the Capitol, but they've now expanded the area to include most of downtown. So it's very promising, but it still has to be worked out in detail and passed through the administration of NCDOT. So there's nothing certain yet, but hopefully that could really help with some of the LPI questions going on downtown. And that is what I have for the policy committee report. And I believe that does it for committee reports. And next up we have staff reports, wherein Mr. Neptune has stolen all of Paul Black's thunder. But he has a picture that he can show as part of the agenda packet, so you can look at the State Street pop-up. So, Mr. Black.
Yeah, quite a successful implementation. Again, thanks to all of the staff who helped, not only here in transportation planning, but across the city. We had a number of folks in transportation that helped bring us cones and helped us design the original batch of measurements. Again, just a great effort by everybody involved. We originally were just going to leave it up for the weekend. We ended up leaving it up all week. We are going to leave the survey open, I think, until the end of the month, and B person may be listening in and can correct me if I'm wrong. We don't expect to get a lot of additional feedback. Usually by this time, it's starting to already drop off, but we weren't sure when to take it down. I don't know if we had an official day or not. So you were right, Nick. Right now, we're still expecting a little bit more to trickle in, but don't expect a whole lot more now that it's come down. Beyond that, outside of the pop-up, there's lots of things percolating in the background. We are getting out of sort of the funding and figuring out what projects are moving forward and getting into construction, and we're in that sort of uncomfortable space where the designs are happening and we're working out all the details. So there's nothing great to report, but there's lots of parts moving behind the scenes. Another month or two and we should have some things to report. I do know that some of the resurfacing projects are already getting on the ground. We got some feedback today for some of the sharrows that were put down on Rainwater Road. And there may be some others that have already gone down. So if you know about any, let me know. If you see any new bike lanes while you're out and around the city, just give me a heads up that they're in place so that I can add them to our inventory and go out and look at them myself. And that's it for me. We've been busy, so I haven't been doing other things. I've been doing actual stuff.
Awesome. Look forward to seeing some stuff out there on the ground. Mr. Lamb, I see you raise your hand there, and I also am remembering that we had a public comment. I didn't know if that member is still waiting or if that is still available to us.
We have not heard from Ms. Sell if she's interested in making public comments tonight. She can send me a message in the chat if she is interested.
Okay.
I will reiterate the thank yous to all of the commission members that took their time, both with the setup for the cycle track and for the cleanup the following weekend. So that was really extraordinary. I also want to echo Mr. Neptune's thanks to Ms. Kellenbeck for setting up truly a phenomenal traffic garden. When I was a kid, that was known as Safety Town. I grew up in Greensboro, and Greensboro had a public facility that was integrated into one of their public parks as a training opportunity. In fact, it was very common as a elementary school child to go to the park in Greensboro and enjoy the training with the Safety Town. So the current term is traffic gardens, and we are going to work on engaging a consultant to do a quick feasibility study for us to look at what some reasonable scales of permanent facilities could look like. And so we will be happy to report that back at a future commission meeting once we engage that and get some feedback from a national expert. The city manager is presenting the proposed budget for the city council tomorrow. And most of you, I think, are aware that the city's budget entails two major pieces. One is the operating portion of the budget, which covers staff and facilities operations and things. The other is the capital improvement program. And the capital improvement program is where projects like BRT and other major facility improvements come from. One of the things that the city manager is going to be presenting tomorrow, and this is not a surprise as it was presented as part of the budget work sessions, is that the city manager is going to recommend the addition of a new position within our group that would be dedicated to Vision Zero implementation. So we're very excited. It's the first time we've had cavalry in a long time. So we're very excited at the prospect of having a new staff member, especially for that purpose and also for pedestrian safety in general. So I believe that's all I've got. I also want to take a minute also, and I thank the commission members for the participation. I also want to thank our staff, Paul, B, and Barbara, for all the work they have done for setting up Bike Month and all the programming and events that we've got. I know it's a little bit different. It's been different for the last 2 years with the pandemic and whatnot, but we've really tried to keep our game up and keep our programming high. Also want to really thank Oaks and Spokes for their partnership and participation with that. Once again, it's proven to be a very strong partnership, and our programming really is at a high level, I feel like, when you look at other cities. So I'm very, very pleased with the things that we have going on. So I want to thank everybody on our end. But that's all I have, Mr. Otwell. I'll pass the gavel to Ms. Godwin if she has any comments or updates around micromobility or bike share.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind everyone of our last Citric Cycle Try-It event of the Bike Month. It's coming up next Sunday at Raleigh Union Station, and we'll be doing staff-led rides on the North-South Greenway Connector. So if you haven't been to one yet, we'd love to have you. We'll be out there from 1 to 3 on Sunday. And
I believe also there's going to be the artist with the mural that's by our bike parking there.
Correct. The mural that was done at the bike parking section at Raleigh Union Station will be there. If you have any questions or just interested in his work, come out and talk to him. And then I also just wanted to let everyone know that scooters are officially going to be on the ground this week, starting tomorrow. So look for them as you're, out and about. We're really excited to have them back and looking forward to the connectivity and the last mile option they're going to provide our residents. That's all I have.
Hey, thank you very much. And I'll also say that in addition to the pop-up bike lane and all the other Bike Month stuff, staff Ms. Godwin, Ms. Person, Mr. Black were all out this last weekend at the e-bike bonanza for another one of their Try Citrix bike events that looked like hugely successful. Looked like everybody's having a great time, and y'all have been knocking it out the box and working so hard. So my wife is a 4th grade teacher. She teaches online now, so she does this on birthdays, and it's crazy. So everybody should turn their microphones on, and we'll have like 1 second of applause and see what it sounds like. Yay!
Yay! Nice.
Dwight, would you like?
Dwight, we can't hear you, but while you're maybe getting yourself unmuted, I want to give a special shout out to Michelle Hood, who's our community manager with Citrix Cycle. It was something I had observed while we had the State Street pop-up. She had brought out a number of folks from the neighborhood, including some moms that I saw get onto those Citrix Cycle bikes and enjoying themselves. Not only along the pop-up, but even inside the traffic garden. And so I just, I really appreciate all of Michelle's hard work, and she's got deep roots in the community, and I just have so much respect and appreciation for her. So I think she works technically for Bewegan, if I'm not mistaken. But I tell you what, Michelle Hood's very much a part of the family, and I just think also deserves a special shout out for all the work that she's been doing. Engaging with the community and getting folks out to participate in growing our cycling culture. So thank you to Michelle. Back to you, Dwight.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Nick. I think I'm off mute this time. So next up on the agenda is general board comment.
I had one quick question. I'm going to put Barbara on the spot. How are scooters?
They will be deployed as of tomorrow.
I thought that was some news that folks would want to hear.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. I think that now that we will move it on to general board comments, and I'd like to take a moment and remind everybody that we have a requested vote coming up next month on the Greenway Safety Report, that we have had a joint committee attending these meetings. We had the draft plan attached to last month's agenda and had a very short discussion. And the schedule changed, and Parks now has time to present to us, but we still don't have time in the schedule to have them present and then come back with edits after that. So we're really encouraging everybody to check out that draft document, be in contact with Parks. In the meantime, if you have any specific questions or recommendations you'd like to see included in the update. And I got to say, they've been really wonderful to work with and very responsive to updating that document. So it would be a fruitful expenditure of your time to contact them if you had any issues. And I also wanted to open it up to see if anybody had any questions after their review of the draft document, because we have some of those committee members here tonight that have attended some of those discussions and might be able to answer some of the more basic questions for you. Yeah, we went over the basic structure of the document last time, so I'm not going to do that again. But if anybody had any questions, I was going to open it up. Ms. Hester.
Yeah, Dwight, just on that one, I think it bears mentioning that one of the updates they had for the committee last time was that they were going to look to shorten that document a little bit and make it more bullet points and a little bit more readable. So if there are particular pieces of that you see that you want to make sure stay included, that's probably very helpful feedback for them. I've emailed Stephen Bentley on the board directly with some of my comments. He's super responsive. So I would just say that's a great way to make and if you need his email, I can provide that or send that around, but he's very responsive to reiterate that. But just to let you know, they are looking to reformat that report a little bit and maybe put an executive summary at the front, since it is kind of a big document and there's a lot in
Yeah, so hopefully the presentation next month shouldn't take quite that long. It's going to be a shorter document. That's really good advice too. So if you see something you really love, make sure you speak up for it. I know that Nick was at some of those meetings and Ms. Hatchell was at some of those meetings. Do you guys have anything to add? Nope. All right.
Well, it looks like Ms. Hatchell's saying something, but she's on mute.
Uh-oh.
I thought she was saying something. Maybe she's trying to. Well, I'll tell you what, while she's perhaps trying to say something, I would just say that, for those commissioners who have yet to find a chance to read through the sort of safety review and the report from the Greenway Committee, I think they extended the time that we could, provide feedback and comments to Stephen Bentley and the rest of the crew. So just a comment to say that there's still time to get feedback to the Greenway Committee if you haven't had a chance to read through the safety report and review.
Mr. Neptune, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm not sure where the link is, so can you guys fill me in on that again? I'm sorry if I've lost it.
Oh, that's all right. I'll share all the communications and the draft document and contacts for you to follow up with after this meeting. I'll write it down right now. Ms. Hatchell, I'm very sorry. I want to hear your comments so badly, but we'll have to do it by email afterwards. So at least you can still vote, I guess. All right, let's open it up for other general board comments. Does anybody have any issues they'd like to bring before the commission?
Just a point of order. Have we officially let Commissioner Hatchell back into the meeting?
Ooh, no, I don't think so. So I move that we, Mr. Lamb, did you have something to add?
Yeah, she was recused for just that item. So at the conclusion of the item, she was allowed to rejoin.
Okay,
we're good.
Still can't talk. Okay. If there's no general board comments, Mr. Caruso. Oh, I see a couple hands. We'll start with Mr. Caruso, then we have Mr. Thomas.
Well, Brian had his hand up earlier, so he can go ahead.
Oh, how kind.
Thank you, Derek. Just very quickly, I noticed in reviewing the minutes from last month's meeting that there was some discussion of redoing the markings on Hillsborough Street for the bike lane and maybe some of the pedestrian facilities there. And I wasn't sure where that was going, but as one of our, I think, most heavily used bike lanes, I think we need to look at that. I've written that myself and noticed that the bike lane markings are kind of faded and seen some other indication of that on different social media channels. So I just was wondering if maybe we had an update on redoing those markings, or could bring that to our attention or to the city staff attention.
Mr. Black, you don't have any immediate updates on any plans to replace those markings?
Not on Hillsborough Street, and we're talking about the section that's between the pull and roundabout down toward Dan Allen.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Again, those, I think, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, those were put in as temporary originally, and the paint is just starting to wear. And we actually talked about that as far back as 2 or 3 years ago. So I don't know what the status is for getting those markings put back down.
Yeah, that section was recently transferred for maintenance from NCDOT to the city. So now the onus is on us to do any kind of maintenance for pavement markings out there. Paul's correct, it was recently installed as a temporary setup. Lasted pretty well for 10 years for temporary, I have to say. But yeah, so we'll check with our traffic engineering staff and see if they've got that in their schedule for their annual summer painting program.
All right, thank you.
Great, and Mr. Caruso.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I had a question. I wanted to see if there were, to follow up on the question from last month and see if there was any update on the intersection of Lewisburg and New Hope. If there was any update from NCDOT.
No, sir. We have tried chasing that, but have not gotten any feedback on that one yet. We share your consternation.
Okay, thank you. And I just had a quick comment as well. I saw some, it popped up online somewhere today, and that the Oxford Road sidewalk project is moving forward, which by itself is good. But I guess my main comment is I saw that they're continuing to do those kind of extended explainer videos, I guess, whatever you want to call them. So I just want to make a comment that I really like those, and as we're kind of talking about public engagement and things like that, I know that they started to do those as part of or instead of the in-person meetings. But I just want to make a comment of how much I like those, and I hope that we continue to do those post-pandemic. I think that they're super informative and can really help expand our outreach to beyond people that can come to the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso. Ms. Hester.
Just quickly, the Deborah Meadows Park project had a virtual open house on May 6th, and I emailed to Dwight to include in his email to everyone the replay for that's on YouTube, as well as a video about the history of the park. And there's a space to take a survey there. I know they're still looking for input, so if you're interested in getting a look at that, I'd highly recommend it.
And I have that link and will include it in my follow-up. All right, anybody else? Ms. Gellenbeck.
That's me again. So, I wanted to share what I mentioned, what I shared with at the last listening session with the council members. I was in downtown for Mother's Day weekend, and two things occurred. One is when I was riding my bicycle on the Person Street bike lane, the section of the bike lane that is runs kind of along the Marbles Museum. There's no parking along that stretch, and there were 3 cars parked on the bicycle lane. Councilmember Milton shared that he too had witnessed it at a different time, a different date. And is there any discussion on putting protected bollards in that space to prevent drivers from parking on top of the bike lane?
Not that I am aware of. We are redesigning sections of that. In fact, we had a meeting this morning as part of the two-way conversion. Right now, there are some sections, particularly where you're talking about, where there might be BRT.
Okay. Another occurrence that same weekend was I was almost hit by an Amazon truck driver when I was using the crosswalk mid-block on Blunt Street that feeds to the Raleigh Transit Center. It's a beautiful crosswalk. I love it, but the pedestrians were not using it. They were waiting. There was no, the vehicle drivers were not paying attention. And I don't know if it's because there's so much happening in that space, but it was 6 feet before that truck driver, his body, the physical truck was close to my body. So I just wanted to mention that. And then, but I also am always going to ask about Glenwood Avenue between the sections of 5 Points and St. Mary's, if that's had any airtime with you guys, Mr. Lamb.
We are having active conversations on some different options on how to address Glenwood Avenue and whether it's going to be focused on the 5 Points area specifically or a larger corridor type approach. So stay tuned. We'll have more for you on that soon.
All right. Are you muted? That was it? Okay. Thank you.
Dwight, I had a question about that.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Mary Jo, I didn't understand what your question was. I didn't understand the code. What are you looking for on Glenwood Avenue in that stretch?
Oh, sure. Glenwood Avenue has been brought up in a couple of meetings recently about the increased active mobility users, as well as the dangers of that stretch of roadway because of speeding. And so we had a public comment that came in, I think, 2 meetings ago. And then the last board meeting, both Susan and myself reported more incidences. And so Mr. Lamb mentioned that he would look into it for us. And so that's what that question was about.
Thank you.
There's several commissioners and a bunch of folks from the neighborhoods that are actively involved in advocating for that issue. There's been some cars landing in yards recently.
And there was a motorcyclist who died in that stretch.
My goodness, I didn't hear about that.
So.
Yeah, someone landed in Lily's Pizza as well about 2 years ago.
Yes, a good friend of mine, her daughter was one of the victims. There's two people that were hurt. They were eating at Lily's. Scary stuff.
Okay, any more comments in general board comments? I think we can go ahead and bring this agenda item to a close. And that brings us to upcoming events. And I believe I don't have anything on my list, but that's shameful because there's so much going on with Bike Month, and maybe somebody else can back me up here and has dates. And I guess not. I'm going to refer everybody to the Oaks and Spokes website, where there are all the Bike Month events that are going on, in addition to Ms. Godwin's last Citrix Try It and Ride It event coming up on, we got to at least throw one date out there. Barbara, help me out.
Oh, my calendar is on the wrong month. Give me one second. That will be the 23rd, Sunday the 23rd, from 1 to 3.
Thanks. And for all the other wonderful Bike Month events, please refer to the Oaks and Spokes calendar. And you can also get there through the Bike Raleigh website, I believe. There's some links on there. And that brings us up to confirmation of the next BPAC meeting. We'll have our next meeting on Monday, June 21st at 6 p.m. And unless anybody would like to bring that up for discussion, we will leave that as it is. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting for the...
Mr. Otwell. Yeah, sorry. Let's talk very briefly because we need a little bit of lead time. We had discussed at the last meeting about the possibility of an in-person retreat in August. Given the rate of changes now with policy regarding masks and vaccinations, that is now sounding like a fairly reasonable goal for us to be able to achieve. So I wanted to ask the Commission's opinion about looking at a Friday in August, as that's been our practice on having the retreats have traditionally been on a Friday and for a half day from 1 to 5 at a city park facility. So I wanted to get some feedback regarding calendars. There are 3 or 4 Fridays in August. Friday the 13th sounds a little ominous. Friday the 20th would be the normal week of your normal commission meeting. There's also Friday the 27th.
Can anyone hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Woo! I did some settings. I am not available on the 20th, so I would love to see it happen if it's going to happen on the 13th or the 27th. I'm not afraid of Friday the 13th.
Mr. Lamb, do we need to work out a date right now, or would it be possible to do this through a survey or an email chain so that we could do it a little bit less publicly? Ms. Hester?
We can do it either way.
Am I allowed to make a doodle poll? Have you guys ever used this? It's like a polling. Am I allowed to do that for this retreat?
No, staff can take care of that for you.
I would recommend that we do that because it's very convenient and everyone can vote their preferred date.
That's no problem. We'll be happy to do that.
I think that I would like a little more time for myself to make sure that my work and personal calendars are clear for an entire afternoon. But I want to
Totally fine. So in principle, though, one of those dates within August on a Friday afternoon, I see heads nodding. So as
totally in favor of that. So yeah, let's do it.
We will set up a doodle poll to get everyone's feedback on that.
On the outside chance, would the 27th work for everybody?
We'll do the doodle poll, Paul. We'll
okay. Well, just because I've got a conflict on the 13th. Okay. Not that I matter, but if you want me there,
we want you there, Paul.
I would like to recommend that maybe we include one other day that's not a Friday afternoon.
Okay. Would a Thursday be okay?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and put the Fridays, but I would also put a Thursday as well.
We can do that.
That's not going to help the week I'm on vacation, but I'm just thinking,
We understand completely. Okay, so we'll work on getting that set up. And then if there's I think as a target, I would suggest that we look to resume in-person meetings publicly on the September timeframe.
That sounds great. I hope that we can keep with that calendar. Kind of related, Mr. Lamb, do you know how much longer my term as the chair lasts? My schedule kind of messed up because we didn't start it right on time last year.
No, I think the work session got delayed, but your election was as part of the August timeframe. So that was
excellent. Okay.
Per the commission bylaws, you hold your elections in August. So if we have a retreat in August, we'll have elections as part of that, and that would be your last meeting as chair.
All right. Excellent.
Very good. Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Can you run for can Dwight run for re-election? That was a very short year.
I don't think I can. I think I'm limited to 1 year at a time. I think if I remember the bylaws correctly, 1 year at a time, but you can come back later. If you can talk the person into it.
Have to look at that and give you feedback on that later. It's been the commission's practice that the chair only serves for 1 year. I'll put it that way.
Great. I'm looking around. I don't see any hands up. I'm going to scroll through one last time. And with that, we will go ahead and adjourn our meeting for the evening. A very short one. Thank you very much for everybody's time and effort. And I look forward to talking to everybody soon.